Week two, kaput. All of my fantasy teams, kaput. Fantasy football is the only thing on planet Earth that could have me feeling this type of way. On top of the world last week, literally feeling like the earth is on top of my face this week. The injuries they're getting out of hand. Some of you guys are plagued like I am, I'm sure. In my main league, the week started off, T. Higgins already ruled out, Jordan Addison ruled out, A.J. Brown just wants to tweak his hamstring a day before the game. Awesome. I got Cooper Kupp. Like, my 5 wide receivers that I drafted, dead. Insane week 2. We're going to recap it as we always do. We got a bunch of cones. We got a bunch of guys that simply cannot perform. A bunch of guys that we cannot trust for our fantasy lineups. But there were a lot of good takeaways as well, all right? Not everybody plummeted like I did. Not everybody shit the bed. Jalen Hurts will be one of those guys tonight, okay? Because on Underdog Fantasy, they've got a free square. Although I can't win this damn week, you guys can, all right? If you haven't been on Underdog Fantasy, they are simply toying with you. They just want you to get onto the platform. All you have to do is go deposit with code BDGE the first time you get on the platform, and they're giving you a half a yard square for Jalen Hurts, all right? Go enjoy a win in real life, in real money, if you did not get a win in fantasy football like myself, all right? Week 2 recaps, we're going game by game as we always do. And this week in particular, going to be a little bit different. And we'll jump into why that is in a second. But, it wasn't all bad for me. We had another big week in the gambling space. As you could see, our ROI was 83%, mainly because I hit on the Raiders beating the Baltimore Ravens, some inside info out here. So make sure you're following me on Pickett, all right? Pickett is this beautiful app where you can track all of your bets at the same damn time, right? Some of these bets were on Underdog. Some of them were on DraftKings. Some of them were all over the damn place. But they all get tracked on Pickett. Pickett's free to use. It's free to download. We have the link right down below. It'll take you directly to my profile, okay? It's like a social platform for betting. So if you want to follow your friends, you want to follow me, you want to follow anyone on BDGE, just click on the Pickett link down below. It'll take you to the App Store, and they let you put in a code, even though you don't have to pay anything, no credit card, nothing. They let you put in a code for who sent you, BDGE. It'll send you to my profile. It'll also give you anywhere from $3 to $100, and you can track my bets. You can track your bets, more importantly, all right? And we love Pickett for that. We love organization this time of the year because this is just unorganized chaos for the most part, okay? And that is what brings us to Game 1, Buffalo versus Miami. Now, as you can see on the right side of the screen, we're doing something a little different this week and going forward. We will now be able to put the Fantasy Life numbers up on the screen because we just signed a nice little partnership deal with them. And this is fucking fantastic for you guys because we get to have these in-depth numbers. Normally how these game-by-game recaps go is, you guys know, I go into every single game. We go into the main box scores. You'll see on the left here, we have the box scores of the high-level stats. Now, Fantasy Life has this tool called the Utilization Report that goes live every Monday at 9 a.m. It's the best tool in fantasy football where it updates snap counts, rush attempts, routes, targets inside the 5 attempts, as you could see where Devon Achane got all of them in week 1, right? It's got all of these like in-depth stats that help me break down the games 1,000 times better for y'all. So these videos just got upgraded massively, all right? And this is available on fantasylife.com. You can get their package, literally $100 for the year. It's such a good fucking deal. And they're going to give you 20% off if you use code BDGE when you get on there, all right? Let's get into the Buffalo and Miami game. Now, we're 2 weeks into this. Buffalo looks fantastic. Their ground game looks fantastic. Their defense looks fantastic. Josh Allen has attempted like 19 passes and I think like 21 or 23 passes. So when everyone talked about Joe Brady being really involved in the run game and pushing the run game narrative, they were not kidding. Oh, no, don't do that. They were not kidding. And James Cook is looking like a damn league winner. This was someone that we were very heavy in on this summer, and I'm happy about that because he's not only getting like the groundwork here, 11 for 78, 2 touchdowns. He was getting work inside the 10-yard line and inside the 5-yard line. He also catches a pass that goes for a touchdown, 17 yards through the air. So if we start to look at the Buffalo Bills over here, this is the greatest part about this damn tool. It's so quick. It's so easy. So James Cook, week 2, inside the 5, 100% of the snaps. Inside the 5, week 1, 100% of the snaps. The short down and distance, that's what SDD stands for, 57 and 63% of the snaps. So everybody was out here fucking yapping about how the most mid running back prospect of all time, Ray Davis, was going to take this huge role from James Cook on the goal line. Like, fuck out of here. Ty Johnson is now playing more than Ray Davis is for the most part, especially, when it gets down to short yardage, and he's probably a better pass catcher too. But regardless, the passing game has been low volume, and it's led to like a severe lack of upside for anyone in the passing game right now. So to be honest with you, just the way it's shaken up, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, like you kind of got to stay away from everyone in the passing game. I think if you have Kincaid, you just kind of got to ride what they have going on there, and you got to keep putting him into your lineup because you don't really have another choice unless you like drafted Brock Bowers late or something like that. But for Kincaid, I just saw a super chat come through. I'm sorry, guys. I will not be taking super chat questions or anything like that for the time being. So I appreciate you guys supporting me as always, but I'm really dialed in for these streams. I try to just give y'all as much value as humanly possible. So please, no super chats. Do not waste your money. Dalton Kincaid, 4 for 33, which I guess is not like terrible for a tight end in fantasy right now. But at the same time, we're not seeing upside because Josh Allen simply does not have to be a superhero in games like this when they dominate. So I think you have to be really hesitant playing anyone in the passing game in Buffalo going forward. James Cook is obviously a high-end RB1 right now. Miami, Tua, yeah, we'll just kind of skip past that. If I had to guess what Tua is going to miss, I would put him in the range of 3 to 4 weeks. I think that's probably realistic unless we hear like a complete out of nowhere report that like a neurologist told him to sit for the rest of the year. I think we see Tua back this year. I think we see him back within the next month or so, maybe 4 or 6 weeks. I don't know, in that range. It's obviously a huge hit for the pass catchers here. They have Skylar Thompson as the backup. They also just signed Tyler Huntley onto the team. So with Tyler Huntley, this is an offense that's just not going to have success passing the ball. They are so rhythm-based. They are so timing-based. And, I mean, Tyler Huntley is not – he's new to this offense right now. Like, this is not an offense that you pick up quickly. This is not an easy offense. This is all about timing. And maybe Skylar Thompson can be, like, okay for them, but you've got to knock these dudes down tremendously. There was something I saw today that in the game Skylar Thompson has played – over the last year or so, whatever, since he's been on the team, Tyreek Hill had 30% target share, I want to say, in those games. So they're scheming up targets for him. Obviously, like the upside for these guys comes in to his accuracy down the field and the timing of the deep shots down the field. Those are not going to be part of this game anymore. So Tyreek Hill, I think based on volume, you probably knock him down to like a low-end wide receiver 1 going forward. And then Jalen Waddle, it's going to be hard to trust him. So he's more of like a wide receiver 3 for me as long as Tua is out. Achan's going to continue to be a high-end running back 1. He legit is looking like the league winner everyone expected him to be. As you could see here, he is a route fucking machine. On the right here, he played 63% of the snaps. He played more in week 2 than he did in week 1, despite everyone thinking that he was going to be fucking injured out here. Turns out he was fine. Didn't look like he was injured whatsoever in this game. He's been running around 53% of the routes on the season and seeing a 19% target share, a 33% target per route run rate. He's getting all the short down and distance work, which is supposed to be Raheem Mostert's job. Raheem obviously missed this game. Jeff Wilson, I believe, got banged up as well. Jalen Wright looked fine. Only saw 23% of the snaps. He'll obviously see an increased upload in work next week if Wilson and Raheem Mostert miss time. But Achan is obviously the guy that you're starting week in and week out. But tough game all around for Miami. Let's move to the Saints and the Cowboys. My goodness. Let's start off with this. Like, the Saints, I mean, everyone and their mother has been wrong about the Saints this year outside of Saints fans. This is another piece that I absolutely love about the Fantasy Life website. I couldn't say more good things about this. This is like, if you're someone who's not too into fantasy, but you still want to see these stats, this is why this fucking website is amazing. Not only can you just see like the snaps and the routes, but everyone's been talking about Clint Kubiak and this offensive scheme and play action and motion and all this stuff. And they did that like 14% of the plays last year. And we didn't really know if that was going to come to fruition or not. All right, let's look at the team styles tab here. Team styles, New Orleans scheme. Look at these fucking numbers. In week 1, 42% play action, 74% of the plays we saw shift motion. Week 2, 67% play action, 66% shift motion percentage. These are the things that we wanted to happen in the preseason. These are the things that people talked about happening with Kubiak in the offseason that gave us a little bit of hope for the upside of this offense. And it's coming to fruition. These are not fluky offensive performances. Obviously, like the level in which they're executing, probably a little bit fluky, but the reason they're having success are not fluky plays or not fluky schemes, right? We are seeing what we want it to happen in real fucking time. So again, I say to y'all that are just coming into the live stream right now, this website, this is fantasylife.com. This is the utilization report. This is probably the single best resource in all of fantasy football right now. And I'm going to be using them on the game-by-game recaps going forward. But you guys can go purchase it for the year, 20% off with code BDGE. So go to fantasylife.com, and when you it's like $100 for the year. So you're getting it for $80. It is the best money that you could spend in the industry right now. So go check out fantasylife.com. Code BDGE will get you 20% off, and it'll get you access to these fucking percentages of shift motion and play action. Like, it is so good. It's so fucking good. All right, let's move back to the box score over here. Kamara, obviously a fucking massive day. 20 for 115, 3 touchdowns, 2 for 65 through the air, another touchdown. So you're talking about 4 touchdowns, 180 yards from scrimmage, was an absolute week winner for anyone that had him. He was someone that we were kind of skeptical going into the year because we thought the offensive line was going to be bad. Turns out that didn't matter at all. And whether it's the scheme or they're playing way above their pay grade, they are playing out of their minds right now, and you're just starting people in the Saints offense. Derek Carr, 11 completions, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he had 11 play-action passes, or 11. It was some fucking insane stat I saw today that was like Derek Carr had 9 or 10 or 11 play-action completions that went for like 230 yards. This is what the Clint Kubiak offense is bringing to this Saints offense, okay? So doesn't feel fluky right now. I'm sure they'll have a dud game eventually. But for the time being, you're firing up Kamara, obviously. You're firing up Rashid Shaheed. You're firing up Chris Olave. On the flip side of things, the ground game in Dallas got ugly. If we look at the running back splits, Deuce Vaughn was getting too fucking involved out here. We got 14% of the snaps for Deuce Vaughn. Hunter Lupke, who I believe is a fullback, got 15% of the snaps, but Zeke now down to 39. We're talking about a complete split. Rico and Zeke on the year at 44% of the snaps. Neither looking efficient doing so. So Zeke, the play behind him was always like he's going to get the goal line work in an unbelievably high-scoring offense. Dallas just wasn't unbelievably high-scoring in this game. So not a lot of huge takeaways. I think you have to be really skeptical to play either of these guys going forward. They are more of a desperate flex play. I don't think Rico is usable considering he's not getting any inside the 5-yard line snaps right now. So until we see him get some like goal line work, he's out of your fantasy lineups and borderline droppable. Dak goes 293 and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb has the 65-yard touchdown pass. Jalen Tolbert kind of broke out, 6'4", 82. He looked really good. He was someone that got a lot of preseason hype as the wide receiver 3. And we had been pretty high on him. I have a lot of shares of him in best ball drafts just because my thesis was kind of like this is going to be a team that throws the ball a lot. Dak Prescott, almost 40 pass attempts in this game. Doesn't have a ground game, which we just saw. They basically average like 3.2 yards per carry. And Brandon Cooks might be cooked. He did score a touchdown, but that was like his entire year last year where he wasn't good. He was averaging like 36 receiving yards a game, but just kept scoring touchdowns. And that's not predictive. That's not something that we can count as being sticky. So that is how this game kind of played out. 2 for 19, and then Tolbert was the one who was like the volume play, 6 for 82. So I think Tolbert's probably a waiver wire ad. We will do a full waiver wire video tomorrow on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed for that, of course. That goes out around noonish Eastern time. If you're new here right now, we do these recaps every single Monday around noon, 1 p.m. Eastern time, so subscribe for those as well. Luke Schoonmaker was one of my tight end streams of the week. He's filling in for Jake Ferguson. This is just a team that tends to target the tight ends at a very high clip, and they don't have real pass catchers behind CeeDee Lamb. So Schoonmaker's another one that you could stream as long as Jake Ferguson is dead. Let's move to the Buccaneers Lions. Bucs escaped with a win here. They like really should not have won this game when you look at the numbers and everything. Like Baker Mayfield, 146. I guess they take sacks off that. 185 passing yards. Jared Goff, 307. The rushing for Tampa Bay, 70 rushing yards to Detroit's 139. Detroit just simply could not score when they get down to the red zone. They just like couldn't get it done at the important parts of the field. Jared Goff throwing a couple interceptions, a couple turnovers will have you in a spiral like that. So good for the Bucs playing scrappy, but hard to really bank on the Detroit Lions kind of down game here. I will say I thought this was for Ben Johnson's a great play caller and he's a great offensive coordinator. I thought they played this game horrifically. And I think what happened here was the Bucs were down a lot of their defensive backs, right? Antoine Winfield Jr. out. A lot of their depth, a lot of their cornerbacks that are normally playing were out for this one. So clearly they went into the game with the plan of Jared Goff's going to throw the ball a shit ton. Like 55 pass attempts is insane for a game where there was 36 points scored. They said, all right, Tampa Bay's strength is their running game, their run defense, and their hole is their passing defense. They forced that narrative way too fucking hard. Like, the Lions can run on any defense that they want. They just chose not to do it. They were having success running the ball. Like, they didn't have a ton of big plays or, like, dominating down the field, but they were playing fine. And I think had they stuck to that script and stopped forcing the ball into Jared Goff's hands, they would have probably easily came away with this game. But they didn't, and it didn't. So, Rachaad White, 10 for 18, another bad day on the ground. That being said, this is kind of what I was saying. Like, the Detroit Lions run defense is going to be elite. They just got DJ Reader back. He had his first game in this one. He only played, I think, like 25% of the snaps. So that was a little glimpse of what we're going to see. But this is going to be a very, very tough defense to run against. And that being said, like Aiden Hutchinson had, I think, like fucking 5 sacks in this one, 4.5 sacks. Like the fact that the Lions lost this one, extremely flukely, in my opinion, but doesn't change the box score, okay? Rachaad White, 10 for 18. He left the game with a groin injury, ended up coming back, finishing the game. From what I've heard reports, it's not too serious. I would monitor it, though, because the muscle strains could end up just needing a week to recover. He did come back in, and it kind of looked like he was limping sometimes, and that's why he couldn't really get anything going, but just really disappointing for the entire backfield. But I wouldn't look too much into the splits of the carries or anything like that because Rachaad White had to leave the game. But again, doesn't seem to be considered serious. Chris Godwin, man, he is looking like the fucking GOAT this year. Another 8 targets, leads the team, 7 catches, 117 yards, and a tug. They talked all offseason about how Chris Godwin was going to play more in the slots, and he has. He is a 65% slot player so far, which has led to, an ungodly amount of targets. It was just a bad game by Mike Evans. Those are going to happen when Baker throws for 185 yards. It just kind of happens. But Godwin's obviously an every week starter. Mike Evans is an every week starter. McMillan had, a dud of a game, but I wouldn't be too discouraged because when we look at the Tampa Bay receivers, in terms of the snap counts and whatnot, McMillan, again, ran a route on 86% of the dropbacks, which has now he actually leads the team. Godwin, being a slot guy, 82%. Mike Evans, 86%. So McMillan on the year, 87% of the routes he is running a route on. He's seen a far less catchable target rate, 60% compared to Godwin at 94 and Evans at 82. That's going to happen when you are a deep threat. His ADOT is 18 yards down the field, which is really fucking far. But yeah, I wouldn't be too discouraged from McMillan because he's still running a ton of routes, and this team is just running a ton of 3 wide receiver sets. Again, we could jump back into team styles and just kind of get a look at that if we wanted to. Tampa, 11 personnel, 62, 82, 72% of the time. I don't think this adds up to 100%, but they're just running 3 wide receiver sets at a very, very, very high rate, which is great to see for a dude like Jalen McMillan because when they're against an easier pass defense like the rest of the fucking NFC South, they'll have better days ahead. On the flip side, Amon-Ra did get hurt in this one. 11 for 119 on 19 targets. He banged up his knee. From what I've heard, it doesn't appear to be extremely serious. Maybe misses a week, but apparently I think he could play next week. So Amon-Ra St. Brown people, you probably avoided something major here, but just keep your eye on practice reports. He might be back for next week. Jameson Williams, another huge game, 11 targets, 5 for 79, catches that 50-yard ball downfield. So he's looking more and more like a legit target in this offense, and it's looking like it's coming at the expense of Sam Laporta, man. 2 really, really down games for Laporta. I don't really know what to say. He obviously had a bad game in week 1. Or not a bad game. He had a fine game in week 1. I did see something on Twitter where someone was highlighting like why Laporta was going to end up struggling in this week. And it was something to do with the Tampa Bay defense. Let me see if I could find it from dudes I follow. I'm probably not going to be able to find it like this. Search settings. Nope. Search filters. People you follow. This might be able to get it to us. It was from Jacob Gibbs. Or no, Ryan Heath. Here we go. This is just a quick hit as the opposite side of the Amon-Ra St. Brown coin. As I discussed above, the Buccaneers blitzed at the 3rd highest rate in the NFL last year. During his rookie season, Laporta's fantasy points per route run fell all the way to 0.32 against the blitz, would have ranked tight end 24. St. Brown is Goff's security blanket, so if they're blitzing at a high rate, which is what Tampa does, then Amon-Ra becomes a target, not Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is a guy who plays typically develop for him. Like play action, he's a monster, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is the actual security blanket. This may have been a 1-week blip, but also worth noting is that the Buccaneers ran the 4th most cover 4 of any team last week. Laporta saw his fantasy points per route run fall to 0.13 against the Shell last year. So that is another little thing that I saw that I think we can probably put a little bit more context behind it. So again, Laporta, while the tight end position is kind of struggling as a whole right now, I would not panic too heavily on Sam Laporta, and if someone's trying to sell him pretty low, I would probably look at him as a target because we know how talented he is, and we know how good this Detroit Lions offense typically is as well. So let's move to the Colts and the Packers. This was not a great showing from AR. Another 3 interceptions. The ground game got going. Alec Pierce looks like the only player in this fucking offense that can catch a damn pass. So I want to say better days ahead for the passing offense, and I'm sure there are, but when A-Rich is not making Superman plays, this offense is going to be inconsistent. It also doesn't help. So one of the things I brought up last week was like, don't overreact to the Joe Mixon or the Josh Jacobs games. But I think the overall point was just continue drafting good players or running backs on good teams that will have a lot of opportunity. And in the recap last week, I said, like, it was just as likely that Josh Jacobs had the game that Joe Mixon had, and someone can go back and fucking find this and clip this from last week, as Joe Mixon had the game that Josh Jacobs had. And we kind of saw the flip ending happen. Obviously, we'll get to Joe Mixon and his injury a little bit later in the video. But Josh Jacobs, 32 for 151 on the ground. Somehow didn't have a single target despite playing so much, but he had 20 carries in the first half. Like, this was obviously going to be the game plan. And the Indianapolis Colts run defense is atrocious. This was one of the reasons why, again, I don't have my Pickett app up right now. But, again, if you're following me on Pickett.com or the Pickett app, you can go follow me on there. Tracks all my bets. I took Green Bay +3 because Indy was so banged up. Juju Brent's out. They're starting safety out. DeForest Buckner had been limited and then left this game. Kwity Paye also limited. Like, this is one of the reasons that I really liked Green Bay and their running offense this week. Josh Jacobs for a bounce back was because dudes like DeForest Buckner were hurt. And when you open up that middle, like the Colts got absolutely scorched last week by Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs did the same thing. This is going to be a defense that you start every running back against. Okay? I don't know who they play next week. They play the Bears. Okay, maybe I won't go that far as to say we need to start DeAndre Swift, but we finally have a good matchup for DeAndre Swift. So he will be startable next week. The point being, though, Jacobs bounced back in a major way. Malik Willis played well enough that like they got the win, which is a huge dub for Green Bay. Matt LaFleur is a GOAT play caller. Jaden Reed down game. Obviously, you couldn't really trust anyone in the passing game on this one, so we're just going to kind of throw that out as Malik Willis attempted 14 pass attempts. Marshawn Lloyd did play, ended up leaving the game. I don't even actually recall off the top of my head what his injury was. It's a lower body injury, so it was his first game back, leaves immediately. Not great. What does mean more run for Josh Jacobs. Now, for the Colts, Pittman back-to-back bad games. The problem is, like, Richardson doesn't take deep shots to Michael Pittman ever. He only takes them to, like, Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. And Josh Downs is going to be back next week. Josh Downs is their starting slot guy. That's going to eat into – I mean, it probably moves Mitchell off the field, and it probably moves Michael Pittman outside, which I guess could be a good thing for him being one of the guys that gets shots downfield. If we look at the routes, though, Pierce is up at 92%. We've seen Adonai Mitchell down at 68%, and even Ashton Doolin is starting to get more and more play time. But I expect Josh Downs to be a much heavier contributor when he gets back. Likely next week. He's been, I think, limited at practice, so he's on schedule to return next week. I don't actually know if it's going to happen. Obviously, the high ankle sprains are really, really tricky, but it does seem like if there's a guy moving down the pecking order, it's probably Mitchell. But you could see the ADOTs are insane here. Pierce, a 25-yard ADOT on the year. Adonai Mitchell up at 18.4. Michael Pittman down at 10.9. That's saying he's a slot guy. So if Downs comes back in, plays the slot, Adonai Mitchell moves off the field, Michael Pittman moves to the outside, maybe he, meets in the middle there of that ADOT. So I think there's a world where there's better days ahead for Michael Pittman and the passing offense for the Colts. But again, this is always going to be the experience with A-Rich. He's just such a raw player. He's started like 20 career games dating back to high school as a football player. So in the games where he doesn't get it done on the ground, this is what his fantasy stat line is going to be, unfortunately. Jets and Titans. Okay, so we had the Jets win 24-17. This was kind of an ugly game all around. Rodgers does throw 2 passing touchdowns to Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. So you have 2 running back touchdowns. Garrett Wilson, another disappointing performance, 457. Here's the deal. As I've been kind of saying for the last month, the Tennessee Titans passing defense, really fucking good. L'Jarius Sneed has been someone who is shadowing the other team's best player. He's stuck with Garrett Wilson for the very large majority of his routes. Better days are ahead for the Jets passing offense. Their schedule, Patriots, tough, but can still be thrown on. We just saw Geno Smith go up for about 350. Broncos can definitely be thrown on. Vikings, but better days ahead. Not an easy schedule by any fucking stretch of the imagination, but better days ahead for this Jets passing offense. Breece Hall, he did get, scorched by Braylon Allen a little bit. Braylon Allen went and got into the end zone twice, which is kind of fucking annoying. But realistically, it was just for the fact that, Breece Hall can't play 1,000% of the snaps, right? You have to spell him at some point. You can't give him every single carry and every single target. So I understand it from a real-life perspective. He still ends up going over 20 points, full PPR, catches 7 passes, 52 yards, and a touchdown. So he goes over 110 total and a touchdown. Breece Hall, obviously great. Braylon Allen is an extremely high upside handcuff, as we've kind of been saying since the summer. I just imagine there are going to be drives where Braylon Allen gets in. He just happened to be the lucky one that got 2 touchdowns in this game. This could have just as easily been a fucking Breece Hall 3-touchdown game. Nothing else on the Jets side of things. Braylon Allen should be owned. I'm not starting him going forward. Will Levis looked really bad again. Tony Pollard, 17 for 62, catches 5 passes for 40 yards. So he goes over 100 total yards from scrimmage again. Tajay Spears left in this game at some point. I don't remember if it was a calf or a hamstring injury, but he pulled something which could leave him out for a week or two and obviously give Tony Pollard an absolute bell cow type share of the workload here. So Tony Pollard's a clear winner on this day with the Tajay Spears injury. Calvin Ridley, 4 for 77. D-Hop is pretty pointless right now. D-Hop is literally just a cone. Played about 10% of the snaps in week 1, I want to say. We'll check out what he did in week 2. All right, so he jumped up from 24 up to 51%. He's only seeing 11% of the targets per route run. That's awful. Calvin Ridley is the clear alpha here right now. Tyler Boyd seeing a lot of targets. He has run a route on about 90% of the targets and is seeing nearly a 20% target share. So Boyd came over from Cincinnati with Brian Callahan, and he's playing a lot here. So I expect D-Hop to continue to get more and more involved in the offense and run more and more routes, but the offense overall is just not good. This was why it was kind of risky drafting this passing offense to begin with, is We didn't know who the alpha was going to be. We don't. If D-Hop never got hurt, maybe it's him over Ridley, but Ridley looks like the best player. He looks like the only playable player in fantasy. Caught an unreal touchdown in the corner of the end zone. I feel like literally no one had any idea what was going on. We were sitting in the office. I was like, God damn, what a pick by Sauce Gardner. God damn, what a touchdown catch by Calvin Ridley within like a 2-second span. It was like one of those where the camera guy got faked out. Ridley caught it like in a little basket in the corner of the end zone. Unreal play. Yeah, I mean, Levis is borderline not startable. Their offense doesn't look great, but Tony Pollard is a playmaker. And the Tennessee Titans defense is going to continue to cause problems for opposing offenses. Speaking of causing problems for opposing offenses, man, the defensive scheme out in Minnesota is so real. It caused a lot of problems for Brock Purdy in this one. He got sacked 6 times. Deebo Samuel continues to be the alpha here. Brandon Ayuk continues to struggle. I think one of the problems with Brandon Ayuk is like he's such a good separator, and maybe he's just kind of slow out of the gate because he missed all of the summer training camp. But he's just not really targeted in this offense that much. Like, when C-Mac's out, it becomes a game plan of using Deebo Samuel more. 10 targets, 8 catches, 110 yards. George Kittle had a big bounce-back game. Ayuk, 4 for 43. I don't think people really understood how low Brandon Ayuk's target numbers were last year. Like, he performed like an alpha, right? Put up like 1,300 yards. He only saw 105 targets last year. It's such a low target number, and Shanahan and the 49ers are so game plan specific. Like, the guys that they're going to utilize on a week-to-week basis are so different. Like, George Kittle might block 70% of the time in one week and then run routes 90% of the time in the following week. Like, let's take a look here. Okay, George Kittle. I guess I'm a fucking clown. 91% of the routes. This was what I was saying. It just didn't really match the production. 91% of the routes last week, 69% of the routes this week, okay? But a monster target game. 26% target per route run rate. George Kittle's always going to be in your lineup. Deebo Samuel's always going to be in your lineup. I'm not worried about Brandon Ayuk being on the field, like 93% routes. But this offense is kind of like hit and miss here and there. Continues to run through Jordan Mason. 91% rush attempt rate. C-Mac's on the IR. C-Mac is on the IR. And from what I've heard, this doesn't feel like it's going to be a quick stint. The Achilles is something not to be played with. So there's a chance that this ends up being far more than 4 weeks. There's a chance this ends up being a 5, 6, 7 week injury timetable for Christian McCaffrey. So don't be looking to move Jordan Mason quite yet. All right, he's looking like a clear RB1. He doesn't get really involved in the passing game, unfortunately. I'm sure one of those days is probably coming for him. But right now, you're starting Deebo, you're starting Kittle, you're starting Jordan Mason. You're obviously starting Brandon Ayuk too, but I think we kind of probably look at him as like a wide receiver 2, maybe low-end wide receiver 2 for the time being. Minnesota. Sammy Slings looks fucking great again. 268, 2 touchdowns. Obviously connects with Jefferson on that 97-yard touchdown down the middle of the field. This was one of my concerns for Aaron Jones. Coming into the year is that Ty Chandler was going to see more work than we wanted to see. 10 for 82 on the ground for Ty Chandler. Kind of flipped efficiency from last week, but also just a tough defense in San Francisco, obviously. Jalen Nailor continues to get into the end zone, which is killing me, dude. Killing me in my league. Like, I have fucking Cooper Kupp, the WOT, A.J. Brown, the WOT. I'm watching, like, I got Jordan Addison. I'm watching Jalen Nailor take all his touchdowns. I got T. Higgins. I'm watching Yoshivas take all his touchdowns. It's breaking my heart in front of me. It's making me lose my mind. But Jalen Nailor, listen, Justin Jefferson left the game with like a quad contusion. From what I've heard, it's not anything serious. At very worst, he'll miss a week, but probably on the better side of playing next week. And we got a little trade action. We got a live trade. We've got a live trade right now. In my league that I was just complaining about. I had Rachaad White, and I needed wide receiver help. It's full PPR. I had Rachaad White. I needed wide receiver help. As I said, I got A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, Jordan Addison. Like, every fucking receiver I have, dead. traded for George Pickens. Okay? I traded for George Pickens straight up. Rachaad White for George Pickens. The guy I traded Rachaad White to had Isaiah Pacheco, who's obviously out for a long time now, and we'll get to all these games and we'll talk about all these injuries as the video progresses. I have Breece Hall as my RB1. I also have Zach Moss as my RB2, who will end up being my RB2 for the time going forward. And I know there's not a lot of confidence in that, but Rachaad White did pull the groin. They said it's not serious, but I don't know. Something looks off there, so we'll see if the injury is a concern for him. George Pickens is going to be one of my easiest buy low candidates of this week, given what his box score did not show relative to what he actually did in the game. So now I lock up George Pickens. Let me know how y'all feel about that trade in the chat. It was Rachaad White for George Pickens straight up. I think it was probably just a fair trade for someone who needed a running back and someone who needed a wide receiver. But when I'm at full strength now, if I ever get fucking back to full strength, my receivers are going to be A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, George Pickens, and then Jordan Addison as like a flex backup play. So I feel okay about that. I needed the help badly. All right, so let me know how y'all feel about that trade in the chat. Jalen Naylor, waiver wire. Let's move to the next game. Seattle and New England. Actually, you know what? Let's just fucking go to the games that I am talking about as they're happening in real time. Like, where are these games? Where are you, Pittsburgh? Okay, Pittsburgh and Denver. So, Pittsburgh wins 13-6, an awful game by Denver and the Denver offense. Right now, you literally can't start anybody. Josh Reynolds seems to be the wide receiver one there. Javonte Williams, it was good to see him back getting, a decent amount of the run here after last week splitting time clearly with Jaleel McLaughlin on the right side of the screen. You can see that his snaps went back up to 63%. He had 65% of the rushing attempts, ran 54% of the routes. So he was more involved in this game again. So I do think he's the one to own over Jaleel McLaughlin, but he's still like a very desperate running back flex play right now. Josh Reynolds also a desperate flex play. There's no one you could really start on Denver. On the flip side, Justin Fields plays again, gets a dub, doesn't get it done for your fantasy team. Najee Harris, another 19 opportunities, just like nothing coming from it. Jaylen Warren finally back in the mix here. It feels like he's finally healthy, but we're not seeing like a real nice share of the actual work here. We can see the snaps, though, did start to get divvied up more. Najee Harris, 48% of the snaps versus Warren's 45%. We saw Warren's rush attempt percentage go up to 28%. He ran 42%. So you saw a complete flip in terms of routes run. Najee was at 41% in week 1, went down to 31% this week. Jaylen Warren was at 31% last week, went up to 42% this week. So expect Jaylen Warren to be more involved in the passing game, kind of the way that you drafted him to begin with. Now, in the receiving game, George Pickens' stat line, one of the most fraudulent stat lines ever. 2 for 29 on 4 targets. This dude could have went like 6 for 170 and 2 touchdowns, all right? This was, Patrick Surtain shadowed him the entire game. He had a huge play called back on a holding penalty. There was multiple PIs called on him, not on him, but on the defender. Like, he looked so good in this one, all right? George Pickens' day should have been a lot better. So if you're just looking at the box score, do not fret about George Pickens here. They get the Chargers, then the Colts. Cowboys is tough. Raiders, Jets, but then Giants, Commanders. Like, it's going to be a little bit of a tough schedule down the slate here, but like no one that I think we need to shy away from for Pittsburgh in terms of George Pickens. But George Pickens is one of my favorite buy low candidates right now, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Just move Rachaad White for George Pickens straight up, all right? Let's move to Seattle versus New England. Shout out New England, man. Really fucking playing their hearts out over here. Big game for Geno Smith, 327 through the air and a touchdown. DK, 10 for 129 and a touchdown. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 12 for 117 on 16 targets. Tyler Lockett, of course, because I had to put him into my lineup in that league where everybody's fucking dead. This is the game that he has. Let's take a look at the snap counts. DK, 96%. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 92%. Tyler Lockett, 88%, which means that we are seeing the grub offense of 3 wide receiver sets that we imagined happening going into the season, right? Let's, again, take a look at the style of offense here. Seattle, 11 personnel, 77% of the time. That is a very, 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 very high rate, and something that you just absolutely love to see. We also finally saw Jackson Smith and Jigba start to be used a little bit more downfield. His A-dot jumped from 3.5 yards, which is how he was used last year in the Shane Waldron absolutely anemic offense, up to 10.6. So that is a big, big jump and where he should be utilized. So JSN, huge game. Got to feel really good about him going forward. Shout out to me and Deal or No Deal for those of y'all that watched live on Friday. For those of you guys that have no fucking idea that we have a whole nother NFL trivia YouTube channel where we fucking play games like every day. We have a Deal or No Deal that we do live every Friday. I played against Gut this week. You pick a case for a running back and a wide receiver. I ended up taking a deal, getting Zach Charbonnet, and he carried my team. Thank God. I won Deal or No Deal, so I will not be having to sing a song. I will not be having to do karaoke opening up the live stream on Friday. But yeah, go subscribe to our NFL trivia channel as well if you're a fucking psycho that loves football as much as we do and literally can't get enough of this content. That is where we're yapping about it at a much higher rate. DK, big game. Good bounce back to see him after getting shadowed by Surtain last week. On the flip side, I mean, the New England ground game, man, looked good. 11 for 96 for Antonio Gibson. Ramondre, another less efficient but massive day on the ground. Still 21 for 81 and a touchdown. Their ground game is buzzing right now, man. They can't get much going through the air. Hunter Henry had 109 of the 149 passing yards in this one, which is fucking insane. He seems to be like the clear number one target here. Let me pull up his target numbers in New England. Hunter Henry, 48% of the targets. On the season, he has 30%. That is such a big share of the targets for a tight end. Those are like tight end one numbers. Right now, I think through 2 weeks, Hunter Henry is probably a top 5 fantasy tight end. He is becoming the number one target for Jacoby Brissett, and I think that's probably remaining the case if Drake May does get into the game. So Hunter Henry is pretty startable as a tight end one for the time being. Nobody else in the passing game is startable for New England, and most of these players are droppable. Ramondre Stevenson continues to be a top 15, top 12 option right now, I guess, for fantasy. Nothing much in the passing game, but 5 targets is pretty good. Kenneth Walker injury, I think they said they're going to be cautious with him, so there's a chance that he misses another week, maybe 2. Commanders, Giants, holy hell. The Giants, I don't know if you guys saw this tweet or this stat. The Giants are the first team in history to score 3 touchdowns, not let up a touchdown, and win the game. So Washington kicked, 7 field goals. New York scored 3 touchdowns, and since their kicker got hurt, they did not. That's insane. There's nobody on this team that can attempt an extra point. I can kick an extra point. Like, I am capable of getting out there and kicking an extra point. How do they not have one player of the 52 remaining players that is a good enough athlete to kick a fucking extra point? This blew my mind, but they decided to just go for 2 every time and miss it every damn time. Daniel Jones, 178, 2 touchdowns, 32 yards on the ground. So, a decent game. You better fucking do that against the Commanders because these are the only good games you're going to get. Devin Singletary, really good game, 16 for 95 and a touchdown on the ground. But the big takeaway here is, of course, Malik Neighbors. He was a must-start. Like, if someone sat Malik Neighbors this week, you are an absolute cone. Malik Neighbors, 18 targets. That was 67% of the targets in this offense, 18 of 28. I believe that is the highest target share since like 2015 in a game, okay? So Malik Neighbors is going to be a level of good at the wide receiver position that we see every 3 to 4 years, every 4 to 5 years when he gets a real quarterback. He is unbelievable. That being said, we're still going to see a lot of weeks like we saw in week 1 where he goes 5 for 60 because Daniel Jones can't deliver him the ball. When you're playing against Washington, things are going to look nice and rosy. And on the flip side, same thing with Brian Robinson. 17 for 133. This dude looks good as shit. This dude looks great on the ground. Jaden Daniels. This was one of my concerns, for him. If you've been watching, like, Cliff Kingsbury literally cannot run a competent offense. He is so bad at running a passing offense. They cannot throw the ball past the line of scrimmage ever. It's so bad, and it's ruining Jaden Daniels. This was one of my, huge game for Jaden Daniels last week. came back down to earth this week because the offensive line had him in hell, right? He was sacked 5 times, but he probably got hit a good 15 times in this game. He left the game because he was injured at one point. Like, that's going to happen more throughout this year. He didn't have any rushing touchdowns. The team didn't have any rushing touchdowns. So when games like this happen, you're going to end up with 11, 12-point games from Jaden Daniels, unfortunately. Eckler continues to be really involved. I think he's like a low-end RB2, high-end RB3 in PPR formats. 3 for 47, another good game through the air, 8 for 38 on the ground. So, he's going to be a guy that I think could consistently put you up 9, 10, 11 PPR points per game. And he was being drafted, outside of the top 10-ish rounds. Terry, we're in full-out panic mode because Cliff Kingsbury cannot run a competent offense against the Giants' defense. So this is the combination of Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury is so bad. It's so bad. I'd be so sad if I was a Washington fan. It's so cool that you have Jaden Daniels, but that combo of coaching is going to ruin this kid. Chargers, Panthers, you want to talk about ruining a kid? Bryce Young is having no one ruin it for him. He is single-handedly ruining his own career. Andy Dalton will probably be in the lineup sooner rather than later. I guess you could try to pick him up in Superflex. I don't know, the weapons he has around him don't make me feel good like he's going to be a good player whatsoever or if he's going to have a high-volume passing offense. But there's not a single player that you can put into your lineup on Carolina. Not even close. On the flip side, J.K. Dobbins again goes crazy. 17 for 131 on the ground and a touchdown. 43-yard scamper to get into the end zone. This dude looks so good. Gus Edwards somehow outcarried him 18 carries. This is kind of the problem with this offensive scheme is that they want to run it so much that they have to get Gus Edwards so involved. Gus Edwards had 18 carries. His longest carry was 6 fucking yards. Like, what are we doing? I know you can't give J.K. Dobbins 30 carries. Like, he's probably going to break down. But overall, it's just good to see. All right? Overall, just great to see for J.K. Dobbins. If you drafted him in round 10, 12, 14, wherever you got him, you have yourself, in my opinion, a certified top 15 fantasy running back going forward. I don't want to go like crazy here and be like he's an RB1, although he's playing like it, because they have the Raiders and they have the Panthers in week 1 and 2. We'll see what happens when they're playing the Steelers next week and then the Chiefs the week after that. So I think he'll probably come back down to earth, but he's easily the one you want to own in this backfield and probably the most valuable fantasy player overall. Quentin Johnson looked kind of good. Weird to say. Might be the only time we ever say that, but the man caught 2 touchdowns, 5 for 51 on 6 targets. Josh Palmer has become an absolute nothing in this offense. Quentin Johnson, 83 and 86% of the routes. You see Josh Palmer's routes drop from 93 to 64%. So maybe they're phasing him out a little bit. Quentin Johnson, I guess he needs to be owned. I guess the man needs to be owned in fantasy football. He's running a lot of routes, 32% target per route run rate. They're also targeting him. He had 100% of the end zone targets in week 2. 71% of the third and fourth down targets. 33% of the play action targets. 49% of the air yards. Quentin Johnstein out here putting the Steen in Steen. Damn. And just one more reminder while you guys are in here, fantasylife.com has all of these stats. It is the best resource. I mean, you can see how quickly their product works, how quickly you move through this stuff. It is unbelievable. And if you want to sign up for their season package, which is only $100 for the entire year, you'll get it from now until like week 3 of next year. You could use code BDGE when you purchase it for 20% off. So $80 for the entire year. This will be the single best purchase you make this year. It is so good. Let's move on to the Browns and the Jags. This is just atrocious out here. Watson just cannot throw the ball for more than 200 yards in a game. This passing offense continues to be one of the worst in the league. Sure, Jerry Jeudy played okay, 5 for 73. Elijah Moore got some targets, but there's just no chance I'm telling you to put any of those guys in your lineup going forward. It was weird. Deonta Foreman, randomly just got featured in this game. 38% of the snaps to Jerome Ford's 42%. Outrushed him 14 carries to 7, though Jerome Ford was a lot more efficient because he busted out a 36-yard run. Pierre Strong also got banged up in this game, so this will probably be a more consolidated backfield going forward between Ford and Foreman. But a little weird that Deonta Foreman just came out of nowhere and saw a lot of carries. So that's definitely something to keep your eye on. On the flip side, T. Law just they need something new in Jacksonville, man. They need. I just tweeted this out before I came on live here. Ben Johnson and Clint Kubiak need to move to Chicago and Jacksonville. Take your pick. I don't care who moves where. Ben Johnson in Jacksonville, Clint Kubiak in Chicago, Clint Kubiak in Jacksonville, Ben Johnson in Chicago. I think I just said the same thing 3 times in a row. I'm not really sure. This is what happens when you're 50 minutes into a live stream that you have not taken one breath yet for. They need something new here because this offense is just so stagnant every time they step onto the field. ETN, 13 for 52 and a touchdown. I got to be honest, man. ETN owners got lucky in this one because Tank Bigsby got hurt immediately in this game. It's a shoulder injury that I believe is expected to be relatively significant. So he's going to be out, and that probably would have been a little bit of a timeshare. Now, Dearness Johnson is, stealing some snaps for Tank Bigsby's role, but this means Travis Etienne is most likely forced back into his bell cow role as long as Tank Bigsby is out. In the receiving group, yeah, Christian Kirk, I don't really know what to say. He was someone I really wanted to target in draft season, but he's gone 2 straight games of absolute zeros for you, actually literally worse than a zero. He got -1 yards in this one, and that's coming with Evan Ingram missing this game. Evan Ingram had a pregame hamstring pull, which is fucking absurd, and I feel for anyone that had to start him. That's really unfortunate. Yeah, that I just don't know what to say. I guess you just can't really start him right now. Brian Thomas Jr. goes for another 94 yards. I think he's startable over Christian Kirk. I don't know how long the efficiency will stay for. He's such a big playmaker down the field. His ADOT's probably like 22 yards. It's 20.8, so 21 yards yesterday. It's just, it's significant. And he's running a lot of the routes, 83% of the routes. Seeing, the good usage here, 22% of the air yards. I guess Kirk's numbers aren't terrible. 89% of the routes, so you're still above Brian Thomas. He's just not seeing the targets. His ADOT was 23.3 in this one. Kind of weird, kind of interesting. He does have a low catchable target rate, lower than Brian Thomas. But yeah, no real excuse. I don't know. Maybe Father Time has just come for Christian Kirk. The Raiders. So as I showed you on my Pickett account earlier in the video, I was, plus 80% revenue on the week, gambling-wise, because I took the Vegas Raiders to beat the Ravens. I just saw a very clear mismatch in the Ravens' offensive line versus what the Raiders' strength is in their defensive line. On offense, you have 2 real takeaways. Obviously, there is no one that you can start in the backfield between Zamir White and Alexander Madison. I think they're going to just continue to bounce back and forth between the hot hand, which is almost never hot in that backfield, and then huge bounce back game for Devontae Adams. You love to see it, 9 for 110 and a touchdown. But Brock Bowers, man. Brock Bowers. He was someone that I didn't really want to draft this offseason, and he's making me look fucking silly. 9 for 98 on 9 targets. They are using him to perfection. They are letting him get out and open in the field and really utilize his best strengths. So Brock Bowers right now is clear tight end, a clear tight end 1 going forward. I don't know how many tight ends I'd want to own over him rest of season. I think you can make a legitimate case. I know in our big league, JMO has Kelsey and Brock Bowers, and he's started Kelsey both weeks. And next week I would be shocked if he doesn't make the flip to start Bowers over Kelsey, which probably means Kelsey will have his big game. Bowers will shit the bed, and that's how fantasy works. But there just aren't a lot of tight ends that you are starting over Brock Bowers at this point because no tight ends are getting 9 targets a game. So when we look at the other side, we want to talk about 9 target tight ends. It wasn't Isaiah Likely this time. Everybody blew the fab budget on Isaiah Likely, and this is, it shouldn't come as a shock to anybody here, but this was our concern, was that sure, it was a big game, but it's not like Mark Andrews is going anywhere. And we saw the routes dip back down. Where Andrews stayed stagnant at about 75% of the routes, Isaiah Likely dipped from 70% down to 50%, probably because they went extremely less 2 tight end heavy. In week 2, 12 12 personnel and 21 personnel, dipped from 67% down to 47%. And that's going to be the problem with a dude like Likely. You just don't know. Like, you don't want to be starting a tight end that is playing on less than 50% of the snaps. So that was a problem. Zay Flowers had a huge game, 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. Derrick Henry, in predictable-ish game script, 18 for 84 and a touchdown. Their passing game it just looks all out of sync, and it's a big problem. Their interior offensive line is a very, very, very big problem that they're going to have to address this offseason. So we'll see about that. But Flowers, of course, continues to be like a wide receiver, too, gets peppered with targets. Andrews is, he's good. He's fine. I think you look at him as like a low-end tight end 1 right now just because how this passing offense is playing, and obviously the increased target competition with Isaiah Likely and Zay Flowers here. Cardinals and Rams. Now, okay, we got a lot to talk about on the Rams side. Let's first start off with the fact that everybody on the Rams is dead. You got Puka hurt, Cooper Kupp hurt. 3 of their offensive linemen missed this game. This offensive line, I was looking at PFF grades, and their pass blocking grade on PFF, it's from 0 to 100, is a 20 through 2 weeks. That is, like, it's not even close. There's never been a pass blocking unit with a similar grade in a season. I think it was 20. Let me see. Okay, 29.2. As you can see, like, the next closest team, the Falcons, they still have another game to play at 44.3. What the fuck are we doing down here? Yeah, their pass blocking unit is bad. Their run blocking unit, bottom 5 as well. This was supposed to be a strength, but everybody got injured. Note boom, whatever it is, Steve Aioli, like, I think that's a fucking DJ, but you guys get the point. Everybody's hurt on this offensive line. Let's go back to last year, just to give you reference for grades. Pass blocking, the lowest grade were the Giants. And you guys remember how bad the Giants were last year? At 43. Remember how bad the Pittsburgh Steelers were? At 45. 2 years ago, the lowest pass blocking grade was 52. We were talking about the Rams' offensive pass blocking grade down at 29. They are fucked right now. Matt Stafford is in hell. This offense is not going to be able to make things happen. When you get sacked 5 times by the Arizona Cardinals, you are in trouble, okay? So that's a problem. And it's going to be a problem for the run efficiency, obviously, of Kyren and Blake Corum. So, yeah, I mean, not a lot of good to say. Obviously, like DeMarcus Robinson filling in, Tutu being on the field, Jordan Whittington. Puka's out. Cooper Kupp suffered an ankle sprain. He re-injured his ankle. I will say he limped heavily off the field. He didn't come back out after the second half, which was not surprising given the fact that they were down like 3 touchdowns. No point to run him back out there. He was in a walking boot. People, like, I don't know that people understand what a walking boot is really for. Like, a walking boot it's not the same thing as like a cast. It doesn't signify a big injury. You can use a walking boot if you have a very low severity ankle sprain. A walking boot is just so that you're like walking on a cloud. If you have a foot injury or an ankle injury, there's no downside to putting a walking boot on. It just means that you're walking on, the least limiting thing. Okay, so a walking boot does not mean that it's a significant injury. Doesn't mean that it's not a significant injury, but seeing a walking boot does not mean it's like the end of the year. I've seen multiple things about Cooper Kupp. I've seen a few Twitter doctors say that it's possibly a high ankle sprain that can keep him out 3 to 4 weeks. Dr. Chow, who's Pro Football Doc, who was an actual doctor for the Los Angeles Chargers for a long time, said he thinks Cooper Kupp got lucky. He thinks this was actually a relatively minor version of an ankle sprain where there's a world that he misses possibly 0 games, maybe 1 game. So we'll have to wait on reports, obviously. He'll get an MRI today. But there's a chance that Cooper Kupp owners might have some hope. Obviously, this was like worst case scenario. We were, with Puka out, we were expecting 20 target games going forward. So we kind of got fucked here. But I think there could be a little bit of optimism. But if he misses time, let's take a look at how the routes were split up between the Rams wide receivers. DeMarcus Robinson continues to be a full-time player. Tyler Johnson, we saw a nice little uptick in routes from 65 up to 78%. Jordan Whittington, 0 to 41%. Tutu Atwell, 8 to 31%. So, the 2 guys that you probably want are DeMarcus Robinson in that order and then Tyler Johnson next. So those are the 2 that I think you can think about if Puka and Cooper Kupp both miss time. And I think Tutu played pretty well for them last year as well, so I don't hate him down here either. But you're gonna have to be pretty desperate because again, this offensive line is in fucking shambles right now, and Stafford's gonna have about 0.2 seconds to throw the ball. On the flip side, Kyler goated 266 and 3 through the air, 5 for 59 on the ground. James Conner continues to be an absolute workhorse, 21 for 122 and a touchdown on the ground. Marvin Harrison, as expected, goes from an absolute dud in week 1 to a GOAT in week 2. 8 targets, 4 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think that was in the fucking first quarter. So for those of you guys that panicked about Marvin Harrison, shout out to you. Trey McBride, 6 for 67 on 6 targets, which was good, and he also recovered a fumble in the end zone. So technically he scored a touchdown. Much bigger fantasy day in this one than he had last week. And it was good to see. He's just still a major part of this passing offense. Again, 21 attempts for Kyler Murray and 6 targets for Trey McBride, which is about a 28% target share to share with Marvin Harrison's 40% targets. That's how this offense is probably going to go. Chiefs, Bengals. Joe Burrow, big bounce back game, even though the Chiefs won 26-25. 258 and 2 touchdowns. T. Higgins misses this game again. Mike Gesicki, 7 for 91 on 9 targets. Let's go check out the snap counts for the Cincinnati Bengal tight end group. Drew Sample, 24%. Eric All looked good. He's a rookie that's very athletic, 37%. Gesicki still around a 50% snap player, so although he had a big target day, you could tell that like the Kansas City defense, their main focus was taking Jamar Chase out of the game. And that led to just Mike Gesicki seeing 9 targets, Eric All seeing 4 targets, Drew Sample seeing 3 targets. They were like, we're going to let your tight ends beat you, which is a good game plan. But I wouldn't expect these days going forward for like a Mike Gesicki. He's obviously the one you want to own here, and I think you could probably do worse, but I'm not going anything crazy here. Jamar Chase, another down game, unfortunately. Better days for sure ahead. T. Higgins, hopefully he can get back next week. Again, one of my biggest takeaways, though, like Zach Moss continues to be a buy low for me. This guy had 82% of the snaps in this one, 60% of the rushing attempts, and more importantly, 63% of the routes. He is taking the majority of the short down and distance and long down and distance snaps. Chase Brown is getting almost nothing, which is kind of surprising. I talked about the last couple of weeks. Chase Brown, he's not a great in-between the tackles runner. He has kind of bad vision, and I don't blame the Bengals for using someone who's a little bit more trustworthy, but Brown does look a lot more explosive. Like, he's the only one kind of ripping off bigger plays, where Zach Moss is kind of just dudding out. But I think against better defenses, or better matchups, I should say, Zach Moss will have bigger games. So if you can move someone like, I don't know, like a Tyler Lockett, or he's probably down too bad for this, but someone that is in the tier with Zach Moss, I would try to trade for Zach Moss. On the flip side, we got Mahomes, kind of had a bad game. Isaiah Pacheco, 19 for 90, but he fractured his fibula, I believe, so he's going to be out. That's unfortunate, man. The usage was so good. 24 touches in this one, 5 catches. He's going to be out for a long time, which now we're left wondering, like, what happens in Kansas City? To be honest with you, I just, like, Samaje Perine, 8% of the snaps here. Carson Steele, 24%. I think Clyde is on the IR, so he's not even eligible to come back for another 2 weeks. I wonder if they bring back Jerick McKinnon, if they sign him off the street. What I think we're going to end up seeing is that this offense just goes extremely pass heavy. Like, neutral game script passing is going to be I don't think we'll see one running back take over the backfield. We did see Steele get seven carries, and Samaje Perine had 0 in this one. But I don't really, like, no one's going to get used in the Pacheco role. Like, that was Pacheco's role, 19 for 90, 5 catches. Like, that's really unfortunate for Pacheco owners. I just wouldn't. I'm not blowing a lot of my fab on the Kansas City backfield as it stands right now. In the receiving game, right? I came on here last week, and the first thing I said was, like, I concede Saquon Barkley. I fucked up. Shouldn't have faded him. Xavier Worthy, y'all were telling me that I needed to give up on him. I needed to give up on the fade on him. This is what happens when Xavier Worthy doesn't average 45 yards per touch. He goes for about 2 fantasy points. Right, Cam Britt Taylor came out. I think that's his fucking name. Did I say that right? Cam Taylor Britt came out pregame and was talking about how, like, Xavier Worthy can't really run routes. All he can do is run fast. And then he fucking OBJ'd him on an interception. Not that I want to see bad things for Xavier Worthy, but, like, when y'all are up in my shit, and personally attacking me, I love to see a little Worthy fade. I love to see it come to fruition. Rashee Rice, still him. 5 for 75 and a touchdown. We saw him catch a beautiful seed down the sideline. If Rashee Rice is getting deep targets, there is no stopping this man from being like a top 7 fantasy wide receiver on the season. 5 for 75 on only 25 pass attempts for Patrick Mahomes. Like, if they go more pass heavy, it's huge for Rashee Rice, right? Hollywood Brown is probably out for the season, so we see what they're going to be. And listen, like, for all the like love that Kansas City's been getting about how their offense is like an unstoppable force, they're really quickly getting back to what they looked like last year with Pacheco out and Hollywood out. Like, the only thing they have new here is Xavier Worthy. He definitely helps stretch the field, but like, Kelsey looks like a cone. He looks like a shell of himself. Worthy's really the only new piece here. And it was another reason why I bet on the Raiders over the Ravens, was because like everyone's like, oh, the Ravens are fine. They just lost to this powerhouse Chiefs team. And the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL probably, but I don't really want to overrate their offense right now because they're not any different than last year, and I would just say that their running game is now going to be a lot worse. So I think we might see Mahomes struggle a little bit in tougher matchups. I don't know what their schedule looks like going forward. Let me bring that up right quick. The Falcons, toughest matchup you could find. Chargers, Saints, Niners, Raiders. All right, so nothing like too excruciating on the schedule. But just kind of want to throw that out there. In terms of Travis Kelce, man, like, you're in hell. You're not going to have a lot of better options to start over him, unfortunately. But like I said, if you drafted like a Brock Bowers or something, then you start him over Travis Kelce. If not, you kind of just have to keep running him out there and hope that he becomes more of a red zone factor. And let's move on to our last game of the day. Caleb Williams getting absolutely ruined by Shane Waldron, that offensive coordinator who was atrocious in Seattle last year. And Chicago said, hey, let's find someone who's really bad at their job and just give him the same job and see if he's not still really bad at it. Turns out he's really bad at it. They need to get the fuck out of the Shane Waldron sweepstakes here and go hire a real offense coordinator because they're going to ruin Caleb Williams if that is the case. 7 sacks, 2 interceptions, nothing on the ground. DeAndre Swift, 14 for 18. The interior of this offensive line for Chicago is a huge problem. The interior of this offensive line for Chicago is going to cause problems for DeAndre Swift and Caleb Williams all season long. We had DJ Moore 6 for 53 on 10 targets. Rome Odunze was a little bit banged up in this one, 2 for 33. Keenan Allen did not play in this one, but if you invested heavy into the Chicago offense, you're not feeling great right now. They did start off against 2 really tough defenses in Tennessee and the Texans, and they get a much better run defense to play against. I mean, their schedule over the next 6 weeks is phenomenal. Indy, the Rams, the Panthers, the Jaguars, the Commanders, the Cardinals. So there's a time to buy low on Bears players. It's right now. Like, if someone's selling DJ Moore, I'd buy him. Actually, I don't even know if there's other players to really want to buy into. Like, you could say DeAndre Swift, but y'all know I've kind of had a fade on DeAndre Swift all summer, so the way he's playing does not make me feel any better about him. The underlying statistics are good, though, I will say. 67% of the snaps, 75% of the rush attempts, 57% of the routes. So he's playing a lot. The one concern is we did see Khalil Herbert get the goal line carry. If he's the goal line back, then that's a huge problem for DeAndre Swift, who's already getting blown up behind the line of scrimmage. Like, Swift, again, one of the problems with him coming in is we've never seen him play behind a subpar O-line. It was always the Lions or the Eagles. And guys with kind of poor vision like DeAndre Swift can be fine when there's big-ass holes. But when your interior is the way that Chicago's is, it's a problem. So Swift is not really a guy I'm even looking to buy low on. I guess DJ Moore would really be the only takeaway there that I'd be looking to purchase if you could. On the flip side, CJ Stroud, man, that dude is just so fucking accurate. Holy hell, he is so good. Running backs, unfortunately, if you're a Mixon owner, I believe he suffered a high ankle sprain. So his day was cut early, and if it is a high ankle sprain, he's going to miss anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, and it might ruin a lot more than that. Dameon Pierce did not play in this one, so we saw a very heavy dose of Cam Akers. Cam Akers did fumble on the goal line, which is not great. So we saw him split snaps. Daria Gumbawale got in here and was fucking playing a lot. But Cam Akers got 21% of the routes, 32% of the rush attempts. He seems to be the next man up. We'll see if Dameon Pierce is active next week. if I had to choose one or the other, I guess I'm going to have to look more into this before I get like on record for the Waiver Wire show tomorrow. Again, subscribe if you're new here because we put out a Waiver Wire show every Tuesday morning. My instinct is definitely Akers over Dameon Pierce right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little bit of a split between Akers, Pierce, Darian Gumawale running routes. It could get kind of bad back there. Receiving, Nico Collins might be just straight up a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL at this point. Unfortunate for Diggs, kind of had the same stat line, but just didn't score the 2 touchdowns, and that was always, possibly on the spectrum. Tank Dell, man, y'all really pushed back against me when I was like talking about Nico being the GOAT this offseason. And y'all were so fucking hooked on the fact that Tank Dell was going to be him. From the start, I always knew Tank Dell's fucking ADP looked fishy as hell. I was like 4th round, 3rd round, wherever the fuck he was getting drafted by the end of the season, man. By the end of the draft season, it always felt weird to me. But everyone's like, nah, the chemistry. Like, y'all are fucking out here going on play dates with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell. Y'all are out here going to dinners with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell telling me about what their fucking chemistry is. Fuck up out of here next time I listen to y'all. I didn't even draft him. I'm just pissed because now Tank Dell, I mean, he's running the routes, I guess. 85% of the routes, 85% for Diggs. But Nico is the GOAT. Realistically, I think with CJ, I think he's so good. And I think, listen, the Chicago Bears pass defense, like Jalen Johnson is tremendous. Their cornerbacks and their safety play is really, really good. So in better matchups, I actually still feel fine playing Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. I think they're both high-end wide receiver 3s, despite not seeing the production yet from Tank Dell. But Nico's about as high-end of a wide receiver 1 as you're going to find in fantasy football. All right? So that is the last game of the slate, but we do have a game tonight. Oh, man. Is it because I'm – oh, okay. We are going to go into some plays tonight, though, because we have the Falcons versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And let's make some plays here, all right? Let's make some plays tonight. This is on Underdog Fantasy, before you ask. And, again, if you are new to Underdog Fantasy or if you want to trail any of these picks, you can download the app. It'll be one of the first links in the description. Use code BDGE when you deposit for the first time. And when you deposit just $10 or more, guess what? They're giving you a fucking free square for tonight's game. Jalen Hurts, literally half a yard, okay? They're giving you a free square to pair with anything else on the board. So, promo code BDGE. $10 or more, you're going to get this free pick of Jalen Hurts tonight for 0.5 yards. What can we pair that with? We need to do an Atlanta Falcons pairing to go with a Philadelphia Eagle. Everyone's super down on Kirk Cousins, man. Everyone thinks he can't move. Everyone thinks he can't play quarterback anymore. This is where I think the narrative changes. One of my favorite props or one of my favorite things to bet on Underdog is the longest whatever line. So like longest completion, longest rush of 15.5 yards for Bijan. Let's see what the longest reception is for Drake London. 21.5 feels pretty high. Kyle Pitts, longest reception of 18.5. I don't hate Kyle Pitts' 3.5 reception line. That feels pretty good. I think the narrative has been pushed way too far on Kirk Cousins. Everyone's like, he can't move. There was that one clip that went kind of viral on Kirk Cousins. He was trying to evade a rusher. I don't know if anyone ever uses context in their whole fucking life anymore. The last time fantasy Twitter used context might have been when the fucking word was invented back in 1942. They just like take anything out of context. If you look at a different angle, yes, he didn't plant off his back foot because he was evading a pass rusher to the right. Fuck up out of here. I might take every over on Kirk Cousins just because. I don't know. Something's speaking to me on the Kirk Cousins 34.5 longest completion. Something is just speaking to me. I like the Kyle Pitts 3.5 receptions, though, too. Let's just make a big-ass fucking line. Why not? Let's run it. And because I've already used the Jalen Hurts 0.5 passing yard line, and they have all these fucking boosts for you, like they're just randomly giving out a 50% profit boost. Yeah, we'll take that. Thank you. Underdog Fantasy, promo code BDGE when you sign up. What else are we going to run with? What do we like on Philly? So A.J. Brown is out, which obviously leads to way more targets for a guy like Devontae Smith, who will see more attention from A.J. Terrell, and obviously we have really good safeties in the bike there. I think this probably becomes a little bit of a Goddard game because the Atlanta linebacking crew is atrocious. Do we want to go Goddard? I feel like I'm almost getting too cute with Goddard. Like, he just can't prove to us that he's actually good. But I'm just taking lines on guys that I feel like aren't that good. Do we have a splits? Are there splits on Fantasy Life? Or will I have to go over to RotoViz? Let's see. Stats and info, NFL stats. Do we have splits? Player stats. Stat type. We have advanced. I want to see what the splits are for Devontae Smith games without A.J. Brown. I'm sure they're high, but let's look at this together. Tools, splits. I feel like it's on here somewhere. I'm just too fucking dumb to figure out where. Info, stats, Steve. Oh no, there's just too much. Game logs, player comparison tool. Hang. Oh, I'm sorry. It's definitely on here, and this fucking tool is phenomenal, but I got to go to a different tool for this. It's on RotoViz. Let's see. Tools. I got to log in first, I think. There we go. Game Splits app. Y'all don't know the resources that I have just glued to the back of my fucking hand. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. I really be doing it for a long. I'm a vet. A.J. Brown. You gotta make me put the fucking dots in here. When did they come in? 2022. No, have they never not played a game together? Okay, they've only ever played together. I didn't realize that. Okay, well, then that's not a good piece of research from me. I apologize for wasting your time and wasting everything. Who do you guys like better? You know what? I'm gonna take it from the chat. Y'all want me to do the leg of Devonta Smith or Dallas Goedert? Do we like Devonta Smith or Dallas Goedert? Who else does Philly have going on? Do they have a Jahan Dotson line? They don't have a Jahan Dotson line. Jake Elliott, 1.5 field goals made. I don't hate that either. Bryce Huff, sack. Josh Sweat, sack. Ooh, who's playing left end? Whoever it is going up against Caleb McGarry feels like a fucking lock for a sack. Because TJ Watt made his life hell. Is Bryce Huff or Josh Sweat the left end? Left end. Oh, don't just give me D end. I need more than that. Okay. Left outside linebackers, Bryce Huff. I might go spicy and go Bryce Huff 0.5 sack right now, to be honest. You guys we got, oh man, Devonta, Goddard, receptions, Devonta, Smith, Smitty. Oh, it seems like Devonta's the play here. All right. I'm actually going to go, in one of the last playoff games. That's right. That's only, that's a fantasy tool. So it only has regular season stats in there. Let's see which games they missed together. Okay. Oh, last year. Woo! Against Tampa Bay, 8 for 184. That's big time. Did they miss any games together in the last one? No, they played together. All right, Smith looking quite crispy. I mean, you guys hit it. So I'm going to go Bryce Huff on a sack, and I'm also going to rip Devonta Smith receptions. He does have a tough match against A.J. Terrell, but should I go yards or receptions or longest reception? Kirk line is gross. You're gross. No, I'm fading you into oblivion. Kirk Cousins, 34.5. Let's take Devonta Smith, 5.5 receptions. $72 receiving yards. I'm going to say Devonta Smith, 72.5 receiving yards. All right, we got a 50% profit boost. We're going to throw 25 on it. Oh, where'd you go? So we can do a straight-up dub, AJ Terrell's so overrated. Dude, I kind of agree. Like, he's a great cornerback, but people talk about him as if he's in, like, the Surtain, Sauce Gardner, even, like, Jalen Johnson tier. And I'm like, Terrell's cool, but he's not – he ain't like, you got to cross off your fucking receiver because of that type beat. So we can hit 4 for 4 and win about $400 on $25, or we could play a flex play, which is basically insurance. So if we hit 3 out of 4, we still double up our money, or more than double up our money. But if we go 4 out of 4, we only get $227. I'll take the flex play here. Bang. All right, so that's my slip right there. We got Kyle Pitts 3.5. Let's fucking ride together, boys and girls. Bryce Young was benched. Yep, that doesn't sound too surprising. That was like one of the first things I think I said in this entire fucking this entire video. That's tough. Yeah, Pitts over 3.5 receptions. Kirk Cousins higher, 34.5 yards, longest completion. Bryce Huff higher, 0.5 sacks. Devonta Smith higher, 72.5 receiving yards. And again, just a very quick reminder, like, if you're ever wondering what I take at any given time on Underdog, on DraftKings, whatever, go hit up Pickett. It's one of the links down below. It is free to download this app. You know, if you rode with me yesterday, we're up 83.46% ROI. How you doing? Yeah, the Pickett app. Use code BDGE when you get on there. You don't have to pay anything. It is absolutely free for you hooligans. And I'm out of here, all right? I'll see y'all tomorrow on the waiver wire video. Go download Underdog. Go download Pickett. Go download or sign up for Fantasy Life, all right? FantasyLife.com, UnderdogFantasy.com, Pickett.com. Use promo code BDGE and all them bitches. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Love you. Smoochies.